Therapists spend their days helping clients navigate life, but behind the scenes, the tax side of running a private practice can feel overwhelming. Let's go through how to get your numbers under control so your practice stays profitable and stress-free.
Your creative genius deserves the same precision behind the numbers.
Welcome to Let's Get Fiscal, hosted by Anastasia, Maisha, and Danielle, part of the women-led team at
Okay,
Coterie
so
Tax.
today we're
From
going
smart
to
tax
kind of
moves
switch
cash flow
industries
strategy,
a
we
little
decode
bit.
everything
Super
it takes to
exciting.
run a thriving creative
we're
business,
kind of
so
a
you
little
can
bit of a
scale with
jack of all
confidence and
trades.
sleep
We
easy at
That's
night.
fair.
Press
Yeah.
I
play
say
and
we
let's
kind of
grow
take
your
all these little
business.
baby chicks under our wings. And sometimes they fly to unexpected places. So I wanted to kind of go over some of the different things that change for therapists and people that are more in that counseling role. I feel like they're still very similar to a lot of our creatives. Like the mindset and things like that. And, you're having to think about somebody's situation and different problem-solving skills and things like that. So we get a lot of kind of crossover in some of those behaviors when we have in therapy as well, and even coaching, things like that. So just making sure that we are getting everybody kind of set up in the best way, making sure that we're taking advantage of some of the different benefits. And then also, in therapy, there are a few differences because, especially if you are creating your own private practice, sometimes that's just you. Sometimes you have a few people that are working with you, and kind of how do you manage all of that and making sure that you are in the best position when we go into taxes.
Okay. So what are therapists or private practices prone to making when it comes to if there are some tax mistakes? What are some of the things that maybe aren't being set up correctly or things that you catch or you see when you're reviewing?
Some of the biggest ones, still, we're always going to harp on making sure that everything business related is in its own business account.
That is fair.
So, because especially if you're in a private practice, you are doing direct payments from some of your clients. You could get a Zelle, you could get a Venmo, and it's all going into your personal account. Or like I said, Venmo can get a little bit tricky. If you're receiving money from Venmo, but then you're paying your cleaners from your Venmo account, then
commingling all those things. Yep. Okay.
So, and even just your not deposit. If we're looking at your deposits to determine your income, but you're spending your income before it gets deposited into your account, then how do we really identify it
and reconcile that all out? I got you. Yeah.
A lot of it becomes a bit easier because of the practice management software and the scheduling software that's being used. So you're really able to easily create kind of like a client management system where you have all your clients listed, when they are coming in, they're able to be charged pretty consistently. But that can always also be a lot of an undertaking and something really big to manage. And even with that, so there's different scheduling softwares that integrate with Stripe. But you have to remember that when Stripe deposits money into your bank account, it's going to have the fees removed. So when they send you a 1099-K, it's going to say one number, but when you're looking at all your deposits, it's going to be a completely different number. So you're going to have to go back and make sure that you're recognizing any of the fees that you're being charged before it actually gets into your bank account.
Nope, that makes sense. What about, speaking of getting deposits and whatnot, a lot of private practices, you have insurance as a whole other part. So people are paying via their insurance. And if I know anything about insurance, they're not always the timeliest. Or if they do time things, it can be a little different. How does that affect them really tax-wise?
In most cases, especially for a smaller private practice, you're going to be on cash basis.
Okay.
So that means you are claiming the income when you receive it or when it actually becomes yours under your control.
Okay.
So that's what they're looking for, is they're looking for when is that moment that you control those funds in whatever way and the previous person has relinquished all rights to those funds. So even if somebody writes you a check and they say, hey, you can come and pick up this check, they've relinquished their rights. You can come and pick up that check at any point in time. So that's considered your income, whether or not it's been deposited into your bank account.
Gotcha. Okay.
So even with those insurance reimbursements, you might have a little bit of a lag in the income, but really we're just looking for when have they actually issued those funds, and then you have access to those funds. And that's going to trigger when it becomes a taxable situation.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. And then what about like deductions that like a private practice or therapy practice could have?
I mean, a lot of times there's a whole bunch of different things. And especially now there's different methods that you can use for therapy. So it's not always just talk therapy.
Yeah, that's fair.
So because you think, okay, talk therapy, maybe I have a couch, some fun pillows. I have, like a air freshener or something like that. But there's also, different therapy practices where they might be using an animal. Because if you have a therapy dog where, especially somebody who's like very anxious and everything, you can have that animal be with them. It gives them something to focus on, and then that lets them open up even more. I mean, they say like with kids, you should like give them a snack and put them in the back of the car. And like while they're eating, they'll give you more than if you just like, tell me about your day. So it's really looking at what is the method that you're using and what are the tools for that method. And are people actually seeking you out because you're using this particular method? Because like I said, like especially now, there's a bunch of different needs. People are definitely changing, society is changing, and we're trying to be a little bit more supportive. And so that is taking different roles, I guess, and it might look a little bit differently. And especially when it comes to when the IRS is coming in and auditing and you're doing something that may not be as mainstream as talk therapy, you have to kind of be able to educate them on how this is important and how this is actually helping. Because, if you just have something to have something, like, I don't know, something ridiculous, like you just put like a pinball machine in there. Like, okay, well, why, why did you actually do this? What is the method that you're doing? And again, like I said, are people actually searching you out, or do you have any reviews of the company, of your practice that say like, hey, because of this situation, like I was really able to open up and I was able to get further in my therapy practice than if I went to some of these other methods.
Gotcha.
So, like I said, there's all kinds of different ways that you can help someone through their problems and help them be vulnerable and open and really reflect on their life and their situation and where they want to be. But just making sure that when you're making those purchases, that actually aligns with the method that you're using in order to get there. So like I said, it's not something that's completely unusual to, have an animal that's helping you and different things like that. But it's being able to show that it has actually really supported by it. So when we're looking at the expenses, kind of taking it from that lens, and then also looking at what are other practices doing in your same area, so they want to make sure that it is ordinary. So you should be able to point to other people that are using the same method and that are requiring the same tools. And then also, like I said, necessary, because you're saying, my clients are coming to me for this, and this is what I need in order to be able to support this. And also too, sometimes, there's obviously continuous learning so that you're always being able to support the clients and the patients in the best way. Like I said, there's all kinds of...
I mean, you do it too. Right. You have continuous learning as well. There's always something changing. We're learning more every day. Okay.
Yeah, about, about ourselves, human life, and,
everything.
Right. Never know when we'll get thrown into another, global pandemic. And, who knows? And like I said, converting from the traditional in-office practice to something that's more remote. So sometimes you have different things like, maybe you have an extra microphone, or you have like a different type of camera, you have your laptop, you have maybe a backdrop that looks interesting. I mean, I have like a really nice inviting backdrop when I'm taking my phone calls, you know? I mean, number one, it tells people a little bit about me and what's important to me and what my style is. But also I tease that if I just have like a blank wall, I look like I'm a kidnap victim, especially doing taxes all the time, So, being able to create a really inviting space, in when you are doing phone calls and video calls and things like that. And then also kind of taking a look at where your clients are, because there are certain states that are going to charge you not necessarily of where you are, but where your client is.
Oh, yeah. That's
so making sure, especially if you are doing remote consultations, that you know what state each person is in, and you're able to kind of provide that information in an Excel format for your tax accountant, because we love Excel and everything. Don't send us screenshots of Excel, please.
We have definitely gotten that before.
Yes. And then, like I said, looking at the home office. So is this your primary place of business? So that's going to be the thing, because if you have an office and you're also working from home, then the home office isn't necessarily going to be your primary place of business. And then also, if you decide to hire someone, we have to think about, do you have control over what they're doing? Are you providing the patients to them? Are you creating their schedule when they're, because they have to show up? And then also, are you giving them the tools in order to do this? If it's a remote kind of thing, are you paying for their Zoom subscription in order to talk to people? And then if they're in office, then you're controlling where they are as well. So those all lead to more of an employee relationship versus a contractor. So you want to be a little bit careful there. But in a lot of cases, you're probably going to run into them being an employee. There are certain situations where maybe you could call them a contractor, but you would want them to have their own business. They're bringing in their clients. They have other clients outside of your business. Because again, if someone has a business, but you're their only client, then that's still an employee-employer relationship.
I got you.
So that's really what we run into, especially like with therapists or physical trainers or things like that, who are doing more session work for a larger umbrella. We run into the contractor versus employee situation pretty frequently. So just making sure that that's set up, and then that you're aware. I mean, especially initially, you're probably going to be the only full-time employee.
That's fair.
Because everybody else, like maybe they'll have like half a workload or something like that, like half a caseload, and not necessarily be full-time. But then once you bring in that office manager, that is going to help you with the CRM, with the scheduling, with making sure that everybody gets taken care of and filling out the insurance paperwork or what have you. Making sure that the office has all of the supplies. Now you've added in a full-time employee, so you might open yourself up to additional requirements, things like, a retirement plan in California, or if you're providing yourself health insurance, do you need to provide it to them too? Because all full-time employees need to be treated the same. And if an officer of the company is treated differently, then that's really considered wages.
Gotcha.
So, did you give yourself a company car? Or did you, all of these different things? We have to take a look at that once you start adding in full-time employees.
Okay. So to the IRS, I know that there's many things within the therapist private practice in general, like circles. So like, do they consider everything in one bucket for the IRS? Like, is it like coaching and talk therapy? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, are they all really one classification, or do they kind of specify that out?
I mean, really, for the most part, a lot of it is going to be earned income, but it is kind of telling the story about how the company is earning money and what is important to the business itself. And then there's certain things like maybe for your state licensure, like your dues, you might need to have, like, your therapy income separated if you were just doing, coaching and things like that. So maybe there's other reasons why you would want to be able to show those different streams a little bit differently. And again, it really just depends on how separated those services actually are. And then also kind of what that licensure body is going to want when you look at your information. So, and I mean, I don't know, I always like more information. So, especially if you're using a scheduler, like having a specific product or even like Stripe, you can create a product and then you're able to show like, these are the things that I'm doing. And it's really good even for a regular business because it's showing you, are my clients more doing a 30-minute session or 45-minute session? Like, where is this kind of naturally going? And if you just kind of are just charging people, but there's no real specific identification of what's working and what maybe isn't working, then it gets a little bit tricky because no matter what you're doing, there are costs associated with offering that service. So if the service that you're offering isn't really picking up or earning as much income as maybe another service that you're offering, then maybe that would be, something that you kind of go into a little bit more.
Gotcha. So it's really like based off of you being able to then make decisions. Like sometimes those separations can be helpful to make future decisions for the business. Okay, cool. Are the thresholds like similar with creators as they are with the like tech? I almost said tax therapist. I'm mixing things up. With a private practice. Yes, with a tax therapist.
Most of the time I am. Yes, it is going to be very similar. So the same thing. So you can have a DBA, or sole proprietorship, and file a request for a DBA in your county and operate under that. Or you can form an LLC and have a single member LLC. And then, again, we're really looking for when you hit that profit number. And especially in this scenario, because you are the main product. You're probably going to get to that number a lot sooner than someone else who, is selling like t-shirts and things like that. And I mean, it will also depend on how many clients are in your caseload and if you have therapists underneath you and what their caseload looks like and how much those costs are and things like that. But generally you are looking for, at what point am I getting over 6 figures in total income? And when is my profit between that $50,000 to $80,000? And especially when we're looking at the S corporations in this scenario, because you do have other employees. So you have market value for what the services you're providing actually is. So you have an office admin and you have other therapists. So you're able to say, okay, if they get X amount of money because they have this caseload and I have half of that caseload, then I should be getting half their pay, and different things like that. But then also looking at, like what level are they? Do you have more certifications than them? So that's going to play into it. So it might take a little bit longer if you have other employees that are working underneath you, because like I said, you're looking for when do we have profit that is more than the value of the services that you're providing the company.
Gotcha. And if you have more people providing more services, that number's bigger. I got you. Okay. Yeah.
So kind of looking at some of that. But a lot of it's going to come down to, especially tracking, and like I said, I mean, even if you have different people that you're paying them based on their caseload, you want to be able to have a system that's not ambiguous, because if you're confusing them because there's like not a really good system of how much they're getting, but you're kind of charging them on like a hourly plus commission basis. You want to make sure that everything is really clear, very simple from the very beginning. And like I said, there's many different systems that can be used now that are supporting the therapist community. So it's just making sure that you are taking the time to set that up and make sure that it's, kind of really streamlined. Because at the end of the day, if you have all of that information and it's really nice and clear, then you're able to provide a certain experience for your patients. But it also is going to save you so much headache on the back end trying to find solutions for all of these problems. And you're actually able to really focus on the business and what's important to you, what's important to your practice, and where do you actually want to go? And kind of what's your goal? Because some people, like maybe just doing virtual calls like that's really where your niche is, but sometimes maybe you want like a really large practice and you have like all of these rooms and you're renting out spaces to other therapists and things like that. So it's really I'm sure everybody says it, you have to really say what it is that you want. Then let's figure out how to get you there, because just identifying what it is, what that end goal is, without that roadmap, then it's going to be a little bit tricky. But like I said, really, because that plays into, will you ever have employees, or will you be a solo practitioner and it's only your caseload that's being considered? What kind of system do you need to be able to manage all of the scheduling of these clients? It's going to be different if you want to have, 5 or 6 therapists underneath you and have a larger client base and things like that. And then also like advertising and things like that. So
no, it makes sense.
So there's a lot of different things that really play into the space. But like I said, the main things, it's going to be the same as every other business, is how are you monetizing this effort? Are you building a reputation? Are you building a brand? Are you, learning something new to support your clients, to expand your caseload? And it's just the answers to what you're spending on in order to get there are going to be a little bit different than a traditional company. But at the end of the day, you want to be able to point to, here's a patient I wouldn't have gotten unless I had this additional service. And this is the reason why I invested in this extra material, or I went through this different training or bought this other book. Because it was really helpful for this patient base as I'm expanding. And that's the reasoning why these expenses are going to be business related.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So, it's, again, really based on the person and what it is that their goals are. But it seems like we say it a lot. It's just based, like, being able to just prove it, like your reasoning behind things and your intent behind things seems to be really, really helpful. So just making sure that like you're at home asking yourself those questions. What is it that you like want these things to look for? And then get an accountant or tax strategist. But yeah.
And what are your friends doing around you? So, because a lot of you'll be interacting with other people that are also in private practice. So what are the things that they're doing and how is this industry changing? And, making sure that story is being told in a really cohesive manner.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense.
So if you have any questions about maybe any expenses or different systems you should set in place now before you get too busy with your expected growth, feel free, put a comment below or send us an email, and we are happy to talk through your particular situation.
Bye, guys.
That's a wrap on Let's Get Fiscal.
Ready to stop guessing and start saving?
Click the link in the show notes.
Grab your consult and let's make your business work for you,
Not the other way around. You've got this.